1. The following is a rather embarrassing story that took place when I was around 19 years old. I am a male who lives in Australia, and this was in the mid-2000s. It was Boxing Day, the day after Christmas for those of you in America, and there were plenty of good sales on at the local shopping centre. Loaded with a wallet fat with cash, I got into my car and made the journey to the mall. Unfortunately, it seemed like everybody else had the same idea. The car parks were chockers, and there seemed very little movement and plenty of cars circling with the same idea as me. To my left, a man, middle-aged and slightly overweight, and wearing too many clothes for the height of summer, was gesturing to me. I ignored him and did a loop. On my return, he was still there. While I was stuck behind stopped cars ahead of me, he approached the passenger side window. He did not give me a good vibe. Shaved head, odd tattoos, unkempt fake leather jacket with gloves in the middle of summer. Afterwards, I could not for the life of me understand why I took the course of action I did.
"Hey mate," he said,
"Merry Christmas.
"Reckon you could do me a favour and drive me to Cash Converters?"
Cash Converters was a combined pawn shop and quick loan outlet a couple of streets from the mall. Because I was full of Christmas spirit, or perhaps thinking I could take this gent if need be, or frustrated with trying to find a parking space and grateful for the interlude, I leaned over and opened the door. "Why not?" I said. He got in. We left the mall and began to talk.
"I just liquidated my business," he said.
It had been, apparently, an electronic goods shop. I didn't believe it. His appearance and demeanor did not speak to a successful or even unsuccessful businessman. The hackles on my neck were rising, but I realized my first mistake had already been made.
"I can sell you a cheap laptop," he said, "or a DVD player. I've got to get rid of them. That's why I need to go to Cashies, Cash Converters. Stop by my business. It's close. I'll get you a cheap laptop."
Cheers, though," I said, as nonchalantly as I could imagine. I noticed that he had never put on his seatbelt.
"Come on," he said. "It'll be brand new. Here's the place."
It did not seem like the place. It just seemed like any old place. Grateful to stop, I pulled over adjacent to an Asian grocer.
"My old shop is behind the grocer," he said. "I'll get you something nice."
"No," I repeated, "and I think I'll leave you here."
"What are you saying?" he said.
"I'd like to get out of the car, thanks."
"Are you threatening me?"
"No," I said, and realized I was still seat-belted in. He turned his whole body to face me.
"I'll carry a knife when cunts like you try to threaten me."
My mouth went dry. Thinking on the spot, I raised both hands as non-confrontationally as possible. "I'm not threatening you." Then he took a knife out of his jeans pocket. It was a kitchen knife, nothing fancy, but big enough to chill me to the bone.
"How about you give me whatever cash you have in your wallet, and I'll bring you back a laptop like I said."
"You're robbing me," I said, and my hands shook as I reached for my wallet. I had to push my hips to reach into my back pocket, and all I could think was that, if he wanted to, now would be the time to stab me cleanly and take the car too, if he wanted.
"Not robbing you,"
he said, and took the yellow $50 notes out of my wallet, pinching them as I held it open for him.
"You'll have a Dell in 2 minutes."
He put the knife back, opened the car door, and sauntered into the grocer. Calming myself, I locked the doors, reached for my mobile phone, and called 000, the emergency number here. I told the operator what had happened. The police station was one street over on the corner, so I assumed they would be on the scene quickly. "I'm going into the shop," I said, and I can't remember whether they approved of this plan or not. I walked into the grocer and asked if a guy had just walked through. They shook their heads and made as though they spoke no English. I assumed he'd gone at the back. Long story short, the guy got away. The police attended in about 10 minutes, and once they had finished shaking their heads about how stupid I'd been to accept a shifty-looking bloke for a ride, took my statement back at the station. That was more or less the end of it, and I'd lost several $100s for being a would-be, if foolish, Good Samaritan. A few weeks later, the constable who took my statement called me. Some girls had been robbed by a fellow who matched the description I'd given. He had sat down at a food court table with them in the same mall, and told them he had a knife under the table and to hand over their money. The police said they'd call me again if they needed me to view footage or come in, but I never heard back a second time. The total failure of my instincts, which are usually quite good, bothered me for a long time afterwards, and I felt so bad for being such an easy mark I didn't tell anyone about it for a couple of weeks. Yet the thing that stayed with me was the odd psychological approach taken by this guy. He had tried to convince me that by robbing me he was doing me a favor, that he was acting in self-defense by pulling out a knife. I'm not sure if this was for his benefit or mine, but either way, even when pumped with the Christmas spirit, I was very careful about who I helped from that point on. 2. A few years ago, my best friend convinced me to set up a Tinder account. I had been single for about 1.5 years after finally getting out of a 3-year abusive relationship, but that's a whole other story for another day. So I decided, why not? I'll make an account, and if I don't like it, I'll delete it. What harm could it do? Little did I know. I was blown away by how many guys messaged me. I think we have a hard time admitting that is a bit of a confidence booster. Anyways, I had been talking to this one guy that I found very attractive, and we seemed to have a lot in common, so I finally agreed to meet with him, but only if it was in public. So after a little bit of back and forth, we agreed on him coming to my work during my lunch, just to hang out for a little bit. I was working at a grocery store in the deli, so I went back to taking orders and helping customers when about 45 minutes later, I noticed this man staring at me. He was wearing sunglasses, which already made him stand out since we were inside, but I automatically knew it was him. I wasn't sure what to do. It seemed like he was wanting to stay hidden from me. Do I call him out and say hi? I ended up just ignoring and justifying it as, he's probably just coming to make sure I am who I say I am. But looking back, that's just giving myself too much credit. I'm no model or anything like that. I'd say that I'm average looking and on the chunky side, with some confidence issues. After he left, I thought maybe he didn't like what I look like in person, and that's why he came to check me out first. But now I know better. So about 2 hours later, he texts me, "I'm just outside." And I reply that I'm just clocking out and I'll meet him up front. It was the exact same guy as before, just without the glasses this time. I still didn't bring it up or tell him that I saw him earlier, it just felt awkward. I always give people the benefit of the doubt and try to justify their actions. Lunch went really well and I really liked him, so I ended up just forgetting about the earlier situation. I told him that I want to take things slow. He seemed to be okay with that. We both really liked jazz, the Salt Lake baseball team, so he ended up inviting me over to his house to watch the game after I got off work. My coworker and friend told me he had a bad feeling about everything, but I just told him I'll be fine, I'm a big girl. We both laughed and I was on my way to his house. When I got there, he told me he has a roommate, but he wasn't home, so it would just be the two of us. The night was going very well, until he said he needed to go to the bathroom. Before I go any further, I need to explain his living room a little. Right when you walk in, the TV is near the front door. The living room and kitchen didn't have a wall in between them. It was just one big space. And the couch was placed in between, so it wasn't against a wall. Sitting on the couch, you are facing the front door and the kitchen is behind you. I hear him open the door, and as I continue to watch the game, I feel him come up from behind the couch and put his hands on my shoulder, down to my hands, and he lifts them up behind me. I thought he was just goofing around, so I just went with it, until he starts making my hands go lower when suddenly I feel his junk. Shocked, I bolted up, turned around to see him butt naked, fully erect, and with the most serious look on his face. His bright blue eyes just slicing into me. I just felt dread. All I could think to say was, what are you doing? Not changing his expression, in a monotone voice he replies, "What do you think?" I just came here to watch the game with you and hang out." "You don't just come over to a guy's house you meet on Tinder not expecting to hook up." Shocked and disgusted, I reply, "I made it clear that I wanted to take things slow. This is not slow." Fuming mad, he walked around the couch and started yelling at me, calling me a tease. At that point, I just wanted to get out, so I grabbed my purse from beside the couch and started to walk towards the door. When he saw what I was doing, he ran up to the door, locked both locks and stood there, still naked and still erect, telling me that I am not leaving till I slept with him. Still in shock, I laughed, thinking he must be joking. This went on for 2 hours. I would go towards the door, and he would push me away, or grab the doorknob, telling me no. Ironically, that was the only knob that I wanted to grab. I'm in survival mode now, racking my brain on what I should do. My phone is dead. I don't know this area. It's been 2 hours, and he is still not letting me go. I honestly felt like he was going to hurt me if I did not do what he said. So I finally told him, okay, but only if you let me go to the bathroom to freshen myself up. He had me go to his bathroom in his bedroom and said he is going to make us dinner and drinks, acting like nothing happened. Like he didn't just spend 2 hours yelling at me, holding me against my will until I would sleep with him. I just sat there trying to get my phone to turn on, knowing it was fully dead, and I can in no way contact anyone for help. But then I remembered when he was showing me his apartment, he showed me his balcony that was shared with his neighbors. I put my ear up to the bathroom door. I hear that he is still in the kitchen making drinks. I open the bathroom door slowly, praying he doesn't walk in or hear me coming out. I slowly tiptoe across his bedroom to the patio when I hear him yell, "Are you kidding me?" I felt my heart sink to my stomach. At that point I knew I was caught. I slowly look up and can see him through the crack in the door, walking to the kitchen sink with his finger in his mouth. He cut his finger. Too bad he didn't cut his dick off. I got a boost of confidence and slowly opened his balcony door, thanking God it wasn't loud. But that confidence didn't last very long. I started thinking, what if he knows his neighbors and they don't help me? What if they're not home? What if they catch his attention and he pulls me back inside and does God knows what to me? I took a big breath and knocked on their patio glass door. It felt like forever till I finally heard someone walk up to the door. She looked through the glass, very confused. But once she saw my face, swollen from crying and distressed, she opened the door. "Can I please walk through your house to leave?" She seemed a little confused. So I said, "Please, I just want to go home," choking back tears. She guides me through her bedroom. I see a man walking into the bedroom and I jump, thinking it's my date coming to find me. But as I look up, I see a 40-something-year-old man confusedly looked at me. Then the woman. She just nods and guides me out to the front door. She gives me a pat on the back and I tell her thank you and rush towards my car. As I'm at the bottom of the stairs, I hear a door open. I expect to look back to see the woman, but it was my date. He is still naked, and once he sees me, he chases me. It is winter in Utah, and the ground is slippery from the ice, but I don't care. Once I make it to my car, I get in, lock the door, look up to the front of his apartments. He is standing there on top of the stairs, just staring at me, and he finally turns back and goes inside. I guess it was too cold for him to chase me all the way to my car. I hit the gas and get as far away as possible. I don't want to go home, so I drive to my parents'. I knock on my own mom's bedroom window, and it's about midnight now. I tell her everything and spend the night there. I ended up not calling the cops. I didn't want to deal with it, which I regret to this day. I don't want him to do that to another girl. But it's been so long that I don't want to go through all that just to have them tell me I don't have enough evidence. I know I made a lot of mistakes that night, but I am a completely changed person now, and this is why I don't use dating websites. 3. This was many years ago. I want to say I was about 11 or 12 when it happened. I've always been a very socially anxious person. I'm talking planning out entire conversations with people before meeting up, including what they could possibly say in response and what I'd say back, and so on and so forth. Your girl can't even talk to a fast food employee without planning out exactly what I'll say and turning into a stuttering mess when they inevitably don't follow the script I set up in my head. So I become uneasy around literally anyone who I don't already know extensively, even to this day as a 20-year-old woman. This will all come into play shortly. It was in the summer, I believe, because my mother and I were getting ready to head over to my grandmother's home, where I spent the day while my mother worked a full-time job. She was a single mother, having separated from Dad when I was 5. My mom worked for the apartment building that we lived in. the employee discount helping her to be able to afford living there. She knew many of the residents in the sizable complexes and was well liked by pretty much all of them, seeing as she's very easygoing, so long as you don't piss her off and spark her fury. During over a decade of working there, she accumulated many tales about odd residents, even coming across a dead body in one of the apartments and learning what a body smells like after a week and a half of decomposition, and having to see the aftermath of a murder in a bathroom, and having met the man who did it previously, to shit being smeared on the walls. There's not many people she didn't know even vaguely, being the maintenance and cleaning person. For whatever reason, I vividly remember that my mom had a garbage bag with her that we were going to throw away on the way out. I also had a pair of tan wedge flip-flops that I simply adored and thought made me look very cool. I wasn't even a little bit. I wore them all the time up until they broke eventually, and this day was no different. I promise all the seemingly unrelated details will come into play eventually. How the apartment building was laid out was similar to a tree branch inside of a rectangle, if that makes sense, where there was a long hall that led to the lobby and entrance area, where the mailboxes and intercom to buzz different apartments were. And branching off it were halls where the apartments were. Once you got out of the lobby, straight ahead was a dumpster, and to the left of that were rows of small one-car garages you could pay to use. Okay, now that we've set all the pieces up, let's knock down the first domino in this ill-fated journey. My mom and I pushed the first door to the lobby open, and we were immediately greeted by the sight of a tall, disheveled man, lingering in front of the door leading outside. He looked worked over, to say the least. My memory of his face isn't the best. Again, I was an anxious, shy child, and tended to avoid looking people in the eye. But from what I remember, he had curly brown hair with stubble covering his face, and immediately I was uncomfortable. Something about the man just seemed off. I wasn't sure if it was just me being overly wary or not, but I shrank behind my mom like usual. Being ever the fearless woman, she faced the man head-on, not even pausing in her stride, noting when he sluggishly turned to look at us with a, "Hello, Nate." Not actually his name, but I don't even know what his name was. I'm sure she addressed him by name, seeing as she knew him somewhat. She pushed through the door with me practically crawling up her back, keeping my head mostly down to avoid any eye contact. Yet something in me told me to glance up as we went past him. Nate hardly allowing us enough room to scoot past him, and what I saw filled my stomach with dread. Nate's scruffy face had no expression, his head tracking us, eyes glazed over and empty, almost looking straight through me. I've never seen someone look so vacant. It left me trailing behind my mother even closer as she went straight for the dumpster. Not a moment afterwards, she tossed the bag into the trash. Nate burst out of the door, his speech slurred and unintelligible. The only words I could make out were various curse words that made little sense. All we did was walk by him. Why was he acting like we had just pissed on his cornflakes? I didn't dare look back at him, already scared beyond my wits that he hadn't just left us alone and was now drunkenly slurring at us loudly. Thankfully, my mom took charge as soon as the situation took a turn, whispering for me to just come on. Planning on getting out of here, we started for the row of garages not 10 feet to the left. Nate immediately spurred to follow, angrily hissing out, "Get back here now! Get back here! Fuck you!" Without missing a beat. My mom realized that there was no way we'd be able to push the door open, and be able to wait for it to slowly rise enough for us to get in and into our car without this guy being right on top of us. Who knows if he has a weapon, or what exactly his intentions are. Clearly he wasn't in any condition to rationally discuss what he needed. My mom had tried to ask what he was saying when he started cursing at us, only getting him to yell louder. She changed direction, heading towards the other apartment building that's connected to ours. My mom didn't want him to know there was anything wrong. Just calmly hurried walking along, me following nervously, glancing back at him frequently as he continued his drunken, ranting demands of facing him. She knew a man, Chris, who lived in one of the apartments, and he was a big, burly Air Force pilot who could easily handle Nate and save us from whatever it was Nate planned on doing if he caught up to us. She began yelling out for Chris. "Chris, hey Chris, Chris, are you there?" We couldn't safely stop this whole time, having to keep walking while Nate yelled behind us. Chris was either sleeping soundly, unaware of our situation, or he simply wasn't home. Not good. Change of plans. Behind that complex was the main office, where there were front desk workers that could at least help us get away from Nate. It was a long way to the office from where we were, and when I looked back again to see Nate following us, breaking into a sloppy jog, my heart leapt up into my throat. I turned back around, looking to my mom, my voice coming out in a weak croak. "Mom, he's coming after us. What's going on?" She hadn't looked back once, but hearing my fearful voice, she simply said, "Run." The two of us taking off into a run, more yelling followed behind us as we made a mad dash for safety. In the middle of our run, as if we were in some low-budget horror movie, one of my wedge flip-flops fell off my foot. And my stupid 12-year-old self stopped dead in my tracks, every bit of that blonde girl who you tell not to go into the room, obviously containing the serial killer. But she always does, as I went back for it. "Wait, my shoe fell off, I have to grab it." My mom stopped at the sound of my voice, turning around to see where Nate was as I ran back for my beloved flip-flop. If that happened now, I'd just leave the damn thing, but damn it, I loved those shoes. They made me look taller than I was. Thankfully, Nate was struggling with walking in anything resembling a straight line, so I was able to grab the shoe and run back to my mom, kicking off my other shoe ahead of us, plucking it up as we hurried by, at least not pausing to put it back on. The two of us bolted into the main office, the only fancy part of the whole place, probably scaring the shit out of the office workers when we slammed the door behind us and locked it. I immediately burst into tears, hiding behind the couch as my mom instructed the office lady, who looked at us in bewilderment, to call the cops. As another girl dialed, my mom explained how Nate had just started cussing at us and running after us, and how we had no idea what he had planned for us, or if he was armed. A couple minutes later, after we blew in, Nate finally arrived, going right up to the glass door my mom was fearlessly standing in front of, rattling the handle and banging on the door, his muffled voice coming through in a jumble of words. Naturally, my meek self spiraled into a panic at hearing the loud noises, my mom assuring me that he couldn't come in and that help was on the way. After a couple of minutes of fumbling with the door, Nate must have tired himself out, seeing as he turned around and plopped down onto the bench outside, splaying out over it casually like he hadn't just scared us half to death. We almost thought that he had just passed out there when he eventually sat up and staggered away, maybe awoken by the sound of police sirens approaching. The cops did find him quickly, Nate not getting far in his drunken stupor, and he was arrested. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was later evicted soon after, taken in by the police on a mental health hold, following some sort of breakdown. When I asked my mom about him later, she said that he was always a little off. He was really quiet and standoffish, and unsettled her a little bit previous times she had met him. I don't recall myself, but she told me that I had gone with her into his apartment one time on one of her calls. I tagged along during her job when I was younger sometimes, and his apartment was disgusting and covered in dirty clothes and other things. The main thing I remember about Nate is the fact that he had a pet parrot that I really hope he took good care of. But considering his mental state, I have my doubts. To this day, I still have no idea what sparked him to get so angry with us and chase us down like that. But it terrified me to my core. My mom made a good point when I brought this story up to her, saying that if not us, he would have went after anyone who happened to come across him in the state he was in. It's sad, really. This isn't the scariest story by far, compared to people getting kidnapped in the middle of the night. But it stuck with me all these years, and I won't forget the rush of pure fear I felt in that moment. I'll never forget the feeling I had when I walked by him. Every fiber of my being telling me that I was in danger and to get away from this man. I haven't felt so uneasy about someone before in my life, or since, thankfully. I'm glad to have never seen Nate again, but I hope wherever you are now, you've gotten the help you clearly needed. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 410. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I literally have no idea what stories you're going to get in this video as I record this, because although I have recorded the video, there's one story which, although not intended to be offensive, I know some people will take offense at, and I may swap it out for something else. Right, is the weekend, and I'm currently 5:40 in the morning on a Friday, actually, and I'm trying to get all my audio recorded like a good boy, so I have less to do when I wake up, and the birds are chirping, so I might have to close the windows soon, but that's fine. That'll hush them up enough to work. And well, you guys get this on Monday, so I guess you'll know if I streamed or not by now. Even I don't know, it's a mystery. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.